Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming on back. Or maybe this is your first time. Welcome to Adrian and Ryan Stories to Tell. It's our little podcast. We talk about music, we talk about life, we talk about everything in between. I'm Adrian-Klenz.
And I'm Ryan Harrington.
All right. Well, just a little recap. If it's been a while since you heard the first episode, or maybe you haven't heard the first episode. If not, you should go back and check it out. But in episode 1, we kind of talked about what it was we hoped to accomplish with our podcast. We talked about how we got into music as young guys, both of us coming from the Midwest, Ryan from Minnesota and me from right next door in Wisconsin. Yet somehow we both found the blues, we found music, and then we talked about how we met at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire a whopping 33 years ago.
That still blows my mind. 33 years.
I try not to think about it too much because it gets a little depressing sometimes. We're getting to that age where it's like, and we'll talk about it today, but like some of our heroes start to pass, people you know, friends, family, and it's just like, you start to hear the Grim Reaper a little bit. I think you start to
the footsteps of the Grim Reaper.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, I'm gonna let you do this, Ryan. We had a bit of a surprise for people. You want to talk about the tune that you wrote that we just released to the world?
Yeah, Adrian and I started talking about this whole project, and pretty much in the summertime. We started the podcast project and stuff like that. And just for the people that haven't watched the first episode, Adrian had a bout of thyroid cancer and could not sing for a while, and then now Adrian's battling back and trying to get back to a level of singing that he is satisfied with, I guess, if that's a way I could describe that for you. And I kind of sense that Adrian was probably getting ready to, sing. And I asked him if you want to sing the song I wrote called Country Christmas. It's a Christmas song, Country Christmas, like it's said, and Adrian agreed to it, and we put out the song, and we released that last weekend, so that this would be, the December 2025 for anybody, if you watch this later. And of course, it's available on all streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, everything like that. And yeah, we're proud of that. First thing we've recorded since, what was the last thing recorded? Was that Country State of Mind, I think, right?
Country State of Mind, and that was during COVID. I think, was it 2020-ish?
I think it was 2020. I have to go back and look, actually. Around that time, so 5 years ago. And we put that one out, and then COVID, and then Adrian, you got thyroid cancer, and then I was going through everything with my daughter Leslie Ann, so we both kind of simultaneously took a break from music, and now we're back. And part of this, this podcast came from our conversations this summer. And now this song, Country Christmas, and as with everything, we'll put links in the description of this podcast so you can check it out. And we're proud to be back working together and to have something creative to release to the world.
Absolutely. And I've said this in social media, but I want to say it again. I mean, I am grateful to Ryan for kind of nudging me. I mean, I think he's right. I mean, Sensei, I've been thinking about it. It was kind of at like this crossroads. Like, do I say goodbye to singing? I had a good run. I was doing it for, 3 decades-ish. So maybe that's the best I got. And he said, just give it a shot. And it really was therapeutic in a lot of ways. And it's funny because, and Ryan and I talked about this, like, neither of us are huge Christmas music fans. For me, the issue is, when I was a kid, it's like the week of Christmas, you hear Christmas music, and that was great. But now they start that crap in October, and it's like, oh. But I really enjoyed this song. And I mean, for me, it brought back a lot of wonderful memories of the holidays, and it's just a great tune. So, usually there's a small window for people listening to holiday music. There are those that listen to it a lot, which that's your thing. Okay.
I found
But,
out last weekend that they're radio, like I think they're digital, like internet radio stations, but people listen to Christmas music all year long. I was like, there's really?
yeah, I
I was
believe
like,
that.
wow. Okay.
Again, not my cup of
Not
tea, but
mine
I mean,
either.
but hopefully people will listen to this tune, add it to their rotation for the holidays. It's a really great tune. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful to you, Ryan, for encouraging me to do that.
Well, I'm
And
grateful
then
that
we
you
got a
decided
little,
to come back and sing. So,
yeah. And then Nicole got
yeah.
on there. She did a heck of a job as
Exactly.
well. And I'm sure you'll talk a little about Nicole and that you got a project working with Nicole
Yeah.
that, things going on there too. But there's another thing we're kind of just starting to get into, another song that you wrote, and you want to talk a little bit about that. And we don't want to give away too much,
Yep.
but yeah, share what you're comfortable sharing.
Well, we said, okay, the title of the song is 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And I wrote this song about our lives today. Many people, when you're young, you think you're, never going to die.
Invincible.
Invincible. That was the word I was looking for.
We certainly we tested that theory.
Yeah, we
out
tested it a few
for a long
times, and and then now we're old, grumpy old bastards, and it's at over 50. We're both over 50 now, and we won't give away the lyrics of the song yet, but you'll for anybody that's in our situation, you will definitely understand what this is. And we're working on this. We're going to be working with some more friends on this too. Some of our musical friends from throughout the decades of music. We're going to get them involved as well. And that will be coming out in the beginning of 2026.
Yeah. So as Ryan mentioned, he and I kind of started this conversation back in July of 2025. And he was spitballing, and he said, "Hey, I'm working on this idea 10 feet tall and bulletproof." And he's got it pretty fleshed out. So we're just working on the arrangements of it. And as you mentioned, we're gonna hopefully invite some people that from our past to be involved. That's what's really cool about technology now.
Yeah.
I mean, and we touched on this in episode 1, but in case again people are just tuning in, you're sitting in Germany right now,
Yeah.
and I'm here in the United States, and I mean, so the fact that we're able to do this and country Christmas, like you were over there, I was here, we were able to get it done with technology. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It
really is. 10 years ago, this one wouldn't be possible at this level of what we're doing now for a podcast.
Absolutely.
10 years ago, we could have sent files back and forth, but, now it's so easy with technology, that we can do this at ease at home, and sometimes we may have to go into a studio for certain things or record in a certain place for certain effects or things like that. But most of it we can do at home.
Yeah. And I'm not a big technology guy, but I'm able to even figure some of this out. Like Ryan coached me through how to record my vocals for Country Christmas, and I was shocked that I was able to do it, but we were able to get it done. So, I mean, for those that are just getting into music, I mean, here's a time to embrace technology. I'm trying to learn, old dogs can learn new tricks, I guess.
Yeah, we both are definitely doing that right now.
Whether this podcast, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that might be a good segue into. So one of the things, Ryan and I talked about this. Like, this isn't about making money. We've been in the music industry now for 3 decades, and we will share stories about you have high hopes, but you're not usually going to make a lot of money. So we're not about making money here. But in our description for each episode, we have some contact info, like an email address. If you want to email us your ideas, thoughts, you can tell us we suck. You can tell us, hey, your podcast is changing my life. That'd be awesome too. We have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram page. Of course, the YouTube page that the podcast lives on. But we also, if you want to donate, we have PayPal and Venmo that you can contribute a few dollars to help us for the cost of this, because nothing is free in life. So we got to get equipment and stuff.
Yep.
So we'd love a few bucks if you feel so inclined to send it our way. All right. Well, let's get into this week's main topic, I think. And we imagine this is going to go over several episodes. We
Oh yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
how this journey is going to unfold. That's what's been interesting about this. And Ryan, maybe you agree. You and I've been talking since July, and we're just kind of spitballing and like,
Yep.
hey, remember this? And it's like sometimes, more often than not, I'm surprised our memories mesh up pretty well. Especially,
Yeah.
as you said, we're getting old, but we pretty much remember things the same.
Yep.
But as we're having these conversations, I think we're going to find things that maybe don't mesh up. But I mean, the whole idea here is to just talk about our first project together. That's where we want to start here today and see where that takes us. We're going to just talk about that for a few
Mhm.
episodes. So, last time we talked about, we met at Catherine Thomas dorms at UW Eau Claire, University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, back in, I guess it would have been September of 1992. And we shared with folks that we met over a Johnny Winter album.
Mhm.
Ryan
Yep.
was playing Johnny Winter. The album was Let Me In. He was jamming in his room, and I heard it and came down and said, "Hey, that's Johnny Winter." And that started our conversation. And for quite some time, we would hang out, when we had free time on the weekends, especially listening to music. You would jam on the guitar. We'd
Mhm.
talk about music, and we talked about this a little bit in the first episode, and maybe you want to flesh it out a little more. I just remember you wanted to start a band from pretty early on. I remember you talking about a desire to start,
Yeah.
especially like a
A
blues
blues
band.
band. Yeah.
Yep. And I remember you were in a country band early on.
Well, like
And
I think, yeah, like in high school, I played lead guitar for some different groups, and then had I would say kind of like a cover band. I think we played some country. We played like some, that was in, the end of the 80s, early 90s. And, some people are still listening like 50s music and stuff like that. So we'd be playing like, Chuck Berry and, stuff like that, and whatever country music was on the radio at the time, and stuff like that. But I'd always wanted to play blues. And in southeastern Minnesota, blues at that time wasn't a big deal. There was nobody to play it with. So
shock. That's a shock.
yeah, yeah,
I just, yeah. Well, I used to visit where you came from, Plainview, Minnesota.
yeah.
Well, how big is Plainview? I was just thinking about that this morning. How big I put you
Well,
on the spot,
I
but
think I don't know what it exactly is today, but back then I think the sign said 3,200 people.
wow. Wow, that's
So
smaller than I
small.
thought.
Yeah,
Well, I grew up in part in Beloit, Wisconsin, which was at that time about
yeah.
32,000 people, but same thing, like blues wasn't a real prevalent part of the scene there.
Was it primarily
And
country too?
well, it depended. So Beloit has a very interesting makeup, and I don't know what the statistics are now,
Mm,
but it has a fairly large African American
yeah.
population. So there were
Mm,
parts of town where you'd go and you might hear R&B, soul, sort of hip hop, but you wouldn't hear blues. And then if you were in the white folks part of town,
yeah.
maybe some country, the top 40 stuff. But
Mm,
I mean, blues was not something you heard really at all. And I talked last episode about meeting Denzel from Denzel's Music Report, and he
mhm.
introduced me to a lot of blues stuff, and that was kind of that, and Steve Ray Vaughan's passing was my foot in the door
Yep.
for blues.
Mhm.
And you kind of share that same thing, that Steve Ray Vaughan was a big influence.
Oh yeah.
But I remember, I thought, and this might be our first example of our memories not quite clicking, that you had a country cover band kind of early in our freshman year. I thought, was it freshman year, like before we started working
Mm.
together? I seem to remember you doing some country gigs. I remember going to it, watching you play a few country gigs, and I thought that was before we started working
Well, I
together.
remember. Well, here I haven't thought about that, but I think what it was is I think the guy's name was Joel. He was on our floor. Was his
Yeah,
Joel Johnson or something like that, or Joel Johnston? I forget his name, but he had some gigs at the cabin at the UWEC, on campus at UWEC, and he organized me to play lead guitar for him.
okay.
And
Maybe that's where, I mean, I do remember Joe because he had like longer
yeah,
kind of hair.
yeah, and I
And
totally forgot about that till right now, till you mentioned that, and I think that might be what you were referring to. He played kind of
that could
like
be.
I think he was kind of into like a lot of different stuff, but I think we were playing like some like country style music or something like that.
Well, I remember that was the first time I saw you play, as I remember
Okay.
going to
Mhm.
support you in that. And I think you're right, because I remember the Clapton Unplugged album was really big. And
Yeah.
I think you
Yeah.
guys did San Francisco Bay Blues, that
Probably.
tune that was, I think you guys covered that.
Yeah.
So I remember that. And then I remember you had the project with Will and Dale, we talked about last
Yeah.
time,
Will
about
Chopper and Dale
O'Leary's.
Drevlo. Hmm.
And that was kind of a cover band. That was
Yeah,
like rock cover stuff,
that was
wasn't it?
covers, and I think mostly like, like CCR, and there was some pretty cool stuff, even like some, you know, I think Peg, who wrote that song Peg, I forget the band, but uh
That one doesn't ring a bell.
and yeah, I have a couple of albums of cool stuff. It's kind of like jazz rock stuff, and but
Mm,
and then stuff like ZZ Top, and so it was,
yeah.
but and then Dale Drevlo always sang Piano Man. That was his like calling card, and he did it great. It was awesome.
So I used to work at what was Charlie K's, uh,
Mhm.
and O'Leary's was the bar connected to it that you would play at,
Yeah,
and so I would sneak in there to
is
hear
that
you.
still there? Do you know?
No, no,
Okay,
when I still lived in Eau Claire, it was a Quiznos.
okay.
It, or no, not a Quiznos, something like that. It was like a sub shop
Oh, okay.
while. And now I don't even know if that hotel's still up there. I don't know what's there now.
Yeah,
It's been
I don't know.
3, 4 years since I've been to Eau Claire, but anyway, so that you were doing some, and then plus you were doing stuff with went to school for music, so you
Yeah, yeah.
were
In the
involved in
jazz
like the
program.
jazz program. You were in the Statesman, and maybe you want to share with folks what the Statesman was.
Statesman was the male chorus at UWEC, and yeah, I sang there. I sang in the Statesman for 4.5 years, 9 semesters. The last semester I didn't because I was writing my thesis in
Well, and the
graduate.
Statesmen are important for. I mean, the Statesmen are very well renowned.
Yeah,
And UW Eau Claire that's one of the things UW Eau Claire and the music program is known for, is the Statesman.
exactly.
And that does play a role in our project, the first band, which we'll talk about in a bit. But it also was their amazing house parties. We have some fun recollections
Oh
of,
yeah,
for instance, they used to do an underwear party.
yes.
And it's exactly what it sounds like. Folks would show up in their
In February,
pajamas, and in February,
Wisconsin.
and you can imagine in February in Wisconsin in pajamas, hilarity ensues.
Yes.
So I used to go to those parties because I knew Ryan and some of the other guys in Statesman. Those were some crazy parties, and the Statesman ended up playing a significant role, I think, in the formation of the Kingsnakes. But I wasn't quite yet at that point where I was playing any music like that. I mean, I didn't have in high school, and I did some singing here and there, but I didn't quite have the balls yet. And we talked last time about I loved like the Sinatra and the crooner stuff, and I could just do that, and I'd sit outside usually after a few beverages and sing and try to impress girls, but
Mhm.
I wasn't really there yet. Um, just hanging out with you allowed me to learn a lot, meet a lot of cool people that were in music. And I remember you almost, I don't know if this is the right word, you tell me, but auditioning people. Like I remember you saying like, "Hey, trying to start this project. I got these guys coming over.
Yeah,
We're going to talk about stuff." And I remember there were a few times you were kind of excited, thinking like, "Well, I think I got some guys. This might work." But then it never would quite
yeah,
happen.
yeah. And we well, that was at this point we'd moved off campus, and we were living on 610 Congress Street. Um, and
Well, actually, we were on Fifth Avenue
yeah,
first.
first, yeah,
And I remember some of those guys would come over to Fifth Avenue, and you guys would hang out, talk music, listen to music. But it was definitely on Congress Street where it really got serious.
yeah,
That was our second
yeah,
apartment, I think.
and so that at that point, then I think how it went back then. How you kind of you network. When you're looking for musicians, and I was starting to get to know people in the Eau Claire, the greater Eau Claire music scene. The first couple of years, I was just part of the music program. Not that I'm saying that was a bad thing. It was just that was kind of my world, my orbit. And then there's the great thing about Eau Claire. at least back then in, the mid 90s, the great thing was that there's this great music scene. And, and so when we both kind of turned 21, then we, got to know more people outside of, just the campus of Eau Claire, which sounds it sounds maybe backwards, but there's this, huge music scene there was this huge independent music scene that didn't really have a lot to do with the university. And,
Yeah.
That's when I started meeting some musicians in that scene, kind of when I got a little bit older and we could go out and go hang in the bars and see, concerts. That's when I started getting to know people.
Hold out of the road. I get down at 35. I only was on the radio. Baby, as sweet as wine. Big old tanks near empty. Almost the end of the line.
That's true.
And so, like, I think what happened is I met Nick Pettis because I think he was playing in one of the jazz bands in Jazz 3, I think. Whoops. And I think he was kind of looking to form a band too. And so I'm pretty sure that, it started because the hardest thing in any band is to find a bass player,
Really?
Oh yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, definitely. See, nothing's changed. Hardest thing, always find a bass player.
Well, I would think, bass player, but just rhythm section in general. I mean, finding a good drummer too that especially meshes with the bass player. I mean, I don't
but
know,
for a blues band, it's a bass player.
well,
but
all right.
But yeah, like for me, like finding the bass player was critical because at least at that time there's so many drummers in Eau Claire, and so I didn't view it as a problem to find a drummer, but I did think it would be a problem to find a bass player.
Sure. For some reason, I had in my head that Aaron Bray was kind of in the scene like when we still lived. I feel like we met Aaron Bray when we lived in Catherine Thomas. I don't know why I had in my head that he was kind of around sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And you and him had talked about something. And like Nick, I remember kind of came in and he was working at Hooligans and that was, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There were statesmen that would come and hang out, but for me, it was always part of that. These musicians and musical people just being there. And for me, I was just absorbing that. And it seemed like you were trying to find something to start a blues project. Like you were trying to find the right guys.
Oh, definitely.
And that right chemistry.
Well, you know how it is when you're starting a band. You've been in enough bands now. You know how it is. You got a vision, and you try to find people that have, nobody's gonna have the exact same vision as you, but you try to find people that have kind of like a similar, that like they're going the same direction as you. And, a band isn't like, there's certain, some bands are formed up, around one person. And the band goes in this, the vision of this one person, and this one person finds other people to do what they want, but we didn't do it that way. We did it more like, like we talked about everything that we've done, it's been about the group and not about one person, and for me, because of my experience in bands going up to that point, I knew that to be a good band for the music that, I kind of wanted to play blues, but, also like, with rhythm stuff in there, in, what became later, swing, stuff like that, and funk, that we needed a good bass player. And we couldn't have started without a good bass player. And that's what I think when I met Nick Pettis, that was the point where I'm like, I think we can go, we got somebody who can do it.
So you met Nick in one of the jazz things.
I think so. I think he was playing in Jazz 3.
Gotcha.
At that time, and Aaron Bray, he was in the music department with me, and so we knew him from, I think, from our freshman year. I think he was a freshman the same year we were, and so
Well, and I think he must have been in KT. So Catherine Thomas was kind of the music dorm in some
Yeah,
ways because it was lower
yeah,
campus. And I don't know if Aaron lived in Catherine. I don't think he lived there, but I think he just was there sometimes because I remember meeting him. I always smile when I think of Aaron Bray because his voice, guys, he just
yeah.
every time. And Aaron Bray, so drummer that we ended up working with. Now he's in acting. I just saw on Facebook. He's like in movies and stuff now. It's crazy. But so anyway, you were like making these connections, and I was not a music guy yet. Like I wanted to be. I knew I loved to sing, but I was just kind of this wallflower, and I was there.
I wouldn't say
hanging out
wallflower.
with you. Well, I don't know whether just a fly on the wall a lot of times, like because I didn't know how to talk music. I just knew I liked singing and I liked listening. So I was there hanging out, listening.
Don't sell yourself short here. From the first day we met, we talked about this in the podcast. I wanted to say last week, we recorded a couple weeks ago, but from the get-go, we were always talking about music, and you influenced, I said, you influenced me on so many things, showed me some stuff that I never would have listened to without you. And, so I think, when I say don't sell yourself short, I mean it with this because, even though we weren't talking about like the nuts and bolts of making music necessarily, we were talking about, you're saying like, check out this album. And I would say, here, check out this. And it was this exchange of like musical ideas that was going on from day one. And that's something I think
I agree with that.
We have that's really special and translated later into playing music together.
Well, and I'm actually glad we're talking about this because you and I have talked about this just in our prep for these things. I've talked pretty openly about my insecurities around I'm a singer, but I don't write music. I don't read music. And so that's been a challenge throughout I do write music, but I mean, as far as like physically writing it out, and that's always been a challenge.
Well, there's a whole bunch of musicians that don't do that too.
Well, that's what I was just going to say is I bring that up for anyone that might stumble across this podcast that's getting into music and might think, well, I mean, I wrestle with it and I'm 33 years into this game, so to speak. And I still sit here, having put out albums where I'm just like, but I don't write music in the sense of writing it out. Like if I meet a musician, I can't writing the notes, but also the structure, like knowing when to come in and like these things I've learned to do from feel. And it's funny because back in the day when we started, you used to have to literally sit there and like point to me or nod to me to know when to come in. And, and so I had to kind of learn that on the fly. But so all these folks were coming in, but we were on Congress Street and we were living with a guy named Randy. And this is where the Statesmen come into play. Because you were in Statesman with Randy.
Yeah. We he was a freshman the same year we were freshmen, and so we were in Statesman the whole time, and really good singer. And we were putting this together, and I didn't want to sing, or at least not be the lead singer. And so we had the drummer in Aaron Bray, bass player Nick Pettis, and then I was playing guitar, singing a little, but I didn't want to be the lead singer at all. And so we asked a couple of people. We were asking around, and we had a couple, I don't know if you would call them rehearsals, but jams. And, we invited some people to come and sing. And I think the third or fourth time that we got together, you were there. And for some reason, Randy could not be there. And I think the song was Tore Down. Freddie King song, and great song. We were playing it, and I was like, well, Adrian, you know this song. Why don't you sing? And then you got up and sang it. I think, I don't know if we had the words, but we got the words, got the lyrics out, and stuff like that. And then a piece of paper on the microphone stand. So
I can speak to that. No, I remember actually. So this is so Ryan and I've been going around for all these years with this story in my mind that I thought was so much cooler. And then Ryan corrected me the other day as we were talking about this. I had it in my mind that this was the first rehearsal these guys were going to have. and I didn't have to work. It was a rare day that at that time I was working at the Eau Claire Academy, which is like a residential treatment center for, troubled youth. And I worked a lot of hours. I had dropped out of school, and so I was working full time, and I happened to be home, and you guys were jamming, and Randy was gonna sing.
Yep.
And then Randy didn't show up.
Yep.
And so we were sitting around, and I was just using I loved hearing you guys jam, but you had beer, and so I'm like, well, I'm gonna sit here and drink this beer. We had a couple cases of Liney's, I think, or probably Liney's.
Oh yeah.
And I was just sneaking a few beers, listening to you guys, and I remember you saying, "Hey, you know this, get up here and sing it." And I remember I ran into your bedroom, and I was writing out the lyrics to the song so that I could get up. And I think we had to pause a few times for me to quick go and scribble out lyrics so I could do it. But that was, and then we got done with the rehearsal, and we were sitting in our back stoop. So we lived on Congress, and we would often hang out in the backyard and sit on the steps, drink beer and smoke cigarettes. And Randy had that big gray boat of a car. I don't remember what kind of car it was. Do you remember what kind? I mean, it was a
Buick,
boat.
I think.
It was a big Buick, yeah.
So.
And he used to love tearing up the driveway, and then he'd whip around and park right up next to the house.
Yeah.
And I feel like a few times he actually hit the
house. One
house.
time he hit the house.
Yeah. So he came barreling up in his traditional fashion, and he basically announced to you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that basically he wasn't going to be able to sing in the band. That he, work, school, he just had too many things going on.
Yeah, something like
that.
And
this was back before cell phones, so he couldn't call up and be like, "Hey, I'm not coming," or So I sat in to sing. Now again, my recollection was, well, this was the first time you guys got together.
No, it definitely wasn't.
I stepped in, but you corrected it. No, you'd actually been trying.
I don't think it was really serious. I think that was the first serious, I guess maybe rehearsal that we did. Before that, it was just, I think Nick and I were a couple times it was just Nick and I, and we were just jamming. And then we got Aaron Bray, and I think we asked a couple of people to come and sing, and for whatever reason it didn't work out. And that, I think it was, I want to say it's the third time. It was the third time that we really got together with the three of us. Because like I said, I think Nick and I were jamming before that and having conversations about, getting something going. Yeah. But I think that was the first rehearsal type thing that we tried.
Sure. Well, my story in my mind's cooler, but I mean, but no, yours is right. I mean, so you had been trying to get some singers, something lined up. So it didn't work out, and I filled in, sang a few tunes that night, and then, as my recollection, it was a few days later we were at the Golden Chair, which no longer exists, but it was a little club bar on Water Street in Eau Claire, beer bar.
They only served beer. They didn't have a complete liquor license.
Yeah, it was two young guys there. I think it was two young guys.
Ron and Kevin Zoller was involved.
Was Kevin?
Well, okay. I don't know if he was an official worker there, but he was friends with them. And so Ron and
they were
they were our age.
They were under 21, I think, weren't they? Or maybe around
a year
21.
Too older than we were. And so, but they had that.
And because they were so young, the city didn't want to give them a liquor license, so they could only sell beer.
And then
so they were trying to get live music going, and it was Howard Lutke and Blue Max was playing down there at the Golden Chair. And so you and me and Nick and Aaron and went down to check that out. And then I remember you guys we were sitting there waiting for the show to start, and you guys had asked if I'd be interested in singing in the band. Yeah. So it was less than a week after that kind of jam session at our apartment. And I, of course, was very excited and said, absolutely, I'd do that. And then it was...
First, sorry to break in, but I got to tell the story of the conversation with Nick.
Yes,
because this is very key to the whole story, is that after you'd sang that evening, and you weren't, I don't know where you were after you had sang the first song there. and I think maybe you sang a couple other or parts of a couple other songs. And for some reason, Nick and I were alone out in the back stoop of the house. And we were talking, and Nick's like, "So what do you think?" And I'm like, I looked at Nick, I'm like, he's our guy. And he was kind of like, I don't know. I'm like, I know it. He's our singer. And he was kind of like, he knew I was serious. I'm like, and I knew that just in that moment, I'm like, I knew that you were the one for the band. And I don't think I had to convince him too long, but he was a little apprehensive, but I knew it.
That bastard.
I knew it for sure. And I knew the potential that you had for sure. And so,
Well, I appreciate that.
And then I believe that was like, later that week or whatever, then we were at the Golden Chair, and then we'd officially then asked you.
Yeah. And I can see why Nick may have had some. I mean, like I said, I literally had no sense of music structure. Ryan would have to point to me or nod to like, okay, start singing. Like, and there's a good chance I was probably in your room trying to scribble down lyrics to the next song when you were talking to Nick, because I do remember having to like quick scramble to like get the lyrics.
It was totally
again,
fly by the seat of your pants.
Well, and this was, to age us, this was before like internet was just kind of a thing. You couldn't, It wasn't like you could just fire up your phone or like get on your computer and like look up lyrics. Like
this
it wasn't
what,
at that point
1996, right?
Yeah.
That was the year.
So internet was there, but it was not what it is today.
No,
so
definitely
if you wanted to jot down lyrics, you would have to sit and listen. And I still have the folders and notebooks where I would like, okay, here's our set list, and I'd have to go and like write out lyrics because you couldn't go online and print them off yet. So we had that gig at Golden Chair, and this is where I think, we'll pause to talk about the name of the band. So, we talked last episode about your cousins.
Yep.
Noel and Evan. Yep. And they lived in Alexandria, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And we would go there for spring break, because what doesn't say spring break like partying in Minnesota where it's cold as hell. Like we
really
do things a little different.
There.
We don't do things in the normal way.
Everybody else goes to Cancun.
So we were in Minnesota, and we would jam. Like we talked about that last episode.
They had a cool record
to a lot of good tunes.
So.
They brewed their own beer, so I remember helping them bottle some of their beer, and then we would sample it. I remember us loving to watch Mystery Science Theater. Remember that?
Oh, God, that was awesome.
Have a few drinks and get a little loopy, and then sit there and laugh our ass off watching Mystery Science Theater.
I forgot about that. That was so much fun.
But for those few days we were hanging out at their house, they had a book about the Doors and Jim Morrison, the No One Here Gets Out Alive book. And I was just kind of getting into the Doors, and I learned that the Doors had a song called Crawlin Kingsnake, which actually was a cover of, I think John Lee Hooker did it first or made it famous as far as a blues tune. And so I knew of John Lee Hooker because of my love of the blues.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, that's that song, but that Crawlin Kingsnake, like I thought that's a cool name. And I remember pitching that to you guys as a band name.
Yeah. Well, I think
Does that sync up with your recollection?
No, definitely, 100%. Yeah, the Crawlin Kingsnakes. You came up with that idea, and I thought it was a great idea. I think we needed a name quickly too, and because didn't we? Didn't like you started, and then didn't we have like a gig or we got our first gig I don't know, the week after or something like that. And
it was.
And I think with the name we were just like, what should we? We needed something for a poster.
And it was literally just, I was reading that book and like, oh, they covered that song by John Lee Hooker. That's a cool song. Mm-hmm. But initially we were supposed to get, we were going to play for Mike Gerard's graduation party. I think was gonna be our first gig, but then like one popped up like less than a week after we decided to be a band.
Yeah, that was Caleb, right?
Yeah, Caleb. And I was trying to remember, it was Caleb and the fellow Pilgrims? Was that what they used to go by?
I can't remember at that time what they went by. It was Caleb Bew and I can't remember if they had that fellow Pilgrims or if it was just Caleb Bew and Friends. I can't remember.
It may have been.
I think it might have been
Bew and Friends.
Caleb Bew and Friends. Anyways, that was also at the Golden Chair, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Said, maybe if Caleb watches this, he can chime in and let us know.
So yeah, Caleb's out in Seattle.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And still playing music out there. But yeah, it was like Caleb Bew and the fellow Pilgrims, and then it was Caleb Bew and Friends. Like I remember they changed names.
There were a couple of iterations of that with Caleb Bew, and but that was where we started.
Caleb was kind of hot shit, at that time, like in the Eau Claire music scene. Like as I recall,
he was great.
Caleb was kind of the big band that a lot of people went to see.
Oh, definitely.
And we were just, I think, learning about the Eau Claire scene.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you had mentioned earlier, like, back then, it was like the university and the jazz program was kind of, insulated from the actual community music scene. It was, its own little world. And so we were just starting to learn about that. Like, we were going out, seeing some of these bands, meeting some people. As we mentioned, we went to the Golden Chair to see the Blue Max.
Yep.
So Caleb reached out and said, hey, how would you guys like to open for us? And I remember it quite vividly. I was at work and you called me at work and we're like, we got a gig next week. And I'm pretty sure I crapped my pants. I remember like we made a plan to meet that night when I got done with work at Mogi's.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Remember the bar Mogi's on Water Street. Mm-hmm. And to start talking about, well, what songs do we want to do?
Yeah.
Because at that point, I think we had rehearsed. Well, it wasn't even. I mean, it was that initial tryout, I guess. And I don't think we'd had a rehearsal. And so we had to figure out, like, okay, how do we fill a set? And what songs do we kind of know? And so that's what we met at Mogi's to like kind of an emergency session to figure out what songs we could do. But also, I think you had to start calming me down because like this was going to be my first gig.
Yeah.
And I remember being neurotic as hell about it. Just like, oh my God, what am I going to say? I don't know what to say to the audience.
Nothing like
I don't know.
Getting thrown to the wolves.
Yes. So we met over drinks and we fleshed out a set list. I think we came up with like 10 songs.
Something like that.
I seem to recall like 10 songs. And we had a band name. I think we threw together a quick rehearsal or two to basically get the songs down so that we could play them.
Exactly.
And that was our first show at the Golden Chair opening for Caleb.
Yep.
And I remember I got off work early and it was a rough night because as I mentioned, I worked at the Eau Claire Academy, which no longer exists.
Oh, really?
I guess at our age.
Okay.
Yeah, they closed a few years ago. At our age, that's, a common theme now. It's like, oh, that no longer exists. The Eau Claire Academy had been around since like, I think the 60s.
Oh, wow.
And it had been like a residential center for like troubled kids. Okay. And they would come from all over the Midwest. And there was some pretty tough cookies there. And after
my sister
working
worked
there
there
a few
too.
years, yes, she did. That's right. A lot of college kids loved working at the academy because it paid well. Back then, I don't remember what minimum wage was. It was like $4 something an hour, and the academy paid like $7 an hour starting. So I worked there. I had no background in like the mental health field or the medical field, but they would hire anybody. I hate to say that, but I mean, it was such a high turnover because it was a really stressful job. Yeah. So by the time I was a crisis worker, so my job was to deal with fights and like crisis situations. So Ryan calls me and I'm in the middle of dealing with like crisis stuff. And he's like, we got this gig. Oh, I'm like freaking out. Well, then the night of our first gig, I'm doing my crisis job. We ended up dealing with this young woman. Pardon me. She was a handful. And for about 3 hours, we were having to like try to physically restrain this young woman and like keep her safe. And so Ryan picks me up. I was probably a hot mess, sweaty. And he's like, all right, let's go. So we go down to the Golden Chair. Pardon me. We go down to the Golden Chair. And it's only a beer bar. And I'm terrified. I need more than beer
Yeah.
to get through my first gig.
Definitely.
So I remember we quick set up. And remember, they used to have those big red glasses.
Yeah, the big plastic. They
what did we call them? You remember?
Bombers?
No.
What if
the Bohemoths?
Bohemoths. I forgot
Bohemoths.
I forgot the
we used to
Berghoff Dark.
The Bohemoths. Berghoff Dark. They were huge, like 32 ounce glasses or something of Berghoff Dark. But even that wasn't enough for me. I was so nervous. So we went across the street to our stomping grounds, the Grand Illusion. And back then I was drinking whiskey sours.
Yep.
So got a couple whiskey sours in the system.
Then
and that brought down the anxiety enough. But I remember I had on stage with me my lyrics, and again, I mentioned last week, visual impairment, I don't see well. And this was always a challenge for me through the years where it's like if I needed lyrics, like I can't sit back and like I would have to like look close. So that was always the dilemma. Like, how do I have the lyrics in a way that I can see them? And again, technology was different back then. I mean, they were always handwritten because it wasn't easy to just type stuff up and print it off like it is today. But I had all that up on stage. And again, Ryan was there conducting because he would literally have to like point to me or nod when it was time for me to come in from a solo. And it was just...
Well, we didn't rehearse a lot
crazy.
before that.
No, I think we had probably one rehearsal.
Maybe two.
And I remember asking Ryan, I asked you, like, well, what am I supposed to say to the crowd between songs? And I don't remember what advice you gave me, but I clearly didn't take it.
I remember you asked me, and I'm just like, well, just talk about the song, and I thought that would be enough. And the one story that I wanted to say about this that I remember vividly, I don't remember the first song we played. I don't remember what the set list was. I do remember the second song was a Muddy Water song because you had like file cards. Remember those things we had for speeches in college and stuff like that? And you had like file cards, and you asked me like, what should I say between songs? I'm like, I don't know, talk about the song. And I remember between song number one, song number two, you're like up in the mic, at the mic with a file card thing, or maybe I don't know what if it was a real file card, whatever, but it was about that size. And you're like, this next song was recorded by Muddy Waters in 1955, and I was just like, Adrian, shut the fuck up! I'm like, let's play the song.
Yeah, I remember. I actually feel like it may have been a Stevie Ray Vaughan song, but I just remember, kind of like that, like. Yeah, this was recorded in Austin, Texas in 1982. And it's like,
so,
dude, shut up.
Yeah, it was hilarious because, like, I think you went to the liner notes of the album and just like, scribbled something down and stuff like that.
That's exactly what I did. And is exactly what I did.
Yeah, that was hilarious. And so it was the first gig, and it was like, totally, you're throwing totally, to the wolves because you had no experience playing, and, we maybe two rehearsals, and it was just, that's kind of the way things were back then, it's just like, hey, it wasn't like, we're practicing, for 6 months for a gig or anything like that, so.
I mean, looking back, it was probably good. I mean, because it forced me to like just improvise and deal with things. And I think that paid off, in the long run. But yeah, I just remember being terrified, needing whiskey sours, and I relied heavily on notes, but we got through it. And I just remember being so relieved when that was done. And like, but I knew that I'm like, okay, I'm hooked. Like, this is what I want to do. And I had sang like back in high school, but I mean, it's a different ball game when you're sitting in an auditorium singing a Christmas carol versus sitting in a bar playing blues tunes, And so I get done and I walk off the stage, and some of my coworkers were there, and I remember one of them, Dave Cosman, just being like, "Holy shit, I can't believe that came out of your mouth." I was like, I can't believe it did either. But yeah, I mean, that was the first gig.
Yeah.
And as I said, initially we were going to play this grad party, which did end up happening, but we did the Golden Chair gig, and then I think we did the Pioneer gig next. So isn't that it?
I think so. I think it was a Pioneer. That was also with Caleb.
we did well enough that Caleb wanted us to open for him. I think it was maybe like even a week later or a couple weeks later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so for folks that don't know, the Pioneer, it was not a live music venue.
You remember that stage?
Like, yeah, that stage. And this may have been the first time they'd ever tried live music.
No, they had they had live music before. Because I remember hearing stories about like one of Schlenker's band used to play there back in the days. I can't remember which band it was, but people talked about that, and so that they had live music, but it was like a long time before we played there. And
well, you referenced that stage. I remember.
Monster.
So they had a pool table, and I think they didn't want to move the pool table, so they like built a stage up over the pool table, but it was on these like long legs, and it just kind of wobbled.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and I remember being up there, and like, it's a miracle that thing didn't collapse.
We played a lot of sketchy stages.
Yeah,
and that was I think that took the prize as the sketchiest stage of all time.
It's definitely got to be up there.
I mean,
it was it's funny. It's just coming to me now. So our second gig, like, we almost died, and that was a good start to like what would happen. I mean, I remember almost being electrocuted on stages and all kinds of crazy things happening. But like that was the first attempt. Like this thing was like swaying.
Yeah, well, the place was packed. The people are loving it, and we're like every movement, you could feel the thing moving. It was definitely not OSHA certified. They would be flipping out over stuff like that.
No, I have a feeling if Pioneer Paul had been visited by the fire department that night, they were probably over code as far as the number of people that were there. Yeah. And if the fire department had taken one look at that stage, they would have been like, no.
They would have shut everything down. But we played a lot of gigs like that.
Yeah, I mean, but so that was kind of a unique gig, though, because as I said, the Pioneer wasn't known for live music, but I guess we made enough of an impression that Pioneer Paul offered us a regular gig there.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
And that was an interesting crossroads for our band. So that would have been our second gig. And we were approached by the club owners saying, hey, would you guys like to play here regularly?
And it wasn't long after our first gig. It was, I think, maybe a week or two later.
Yeah, a week or two.
I forget.
And so that was pretty heady stuff. It was like, okay. But we were in demand because, and again, you correct me if I'm wrong, but Nick Pettis, who was our bass player, worked at Hooligans. Which was a kind of would you say like a sports bar? It was like it
was they had a really good, they had good food, and it was
excellent.
It was like, I wouldn't say direct like a sports bar, but they had good food, and they had enough TVs where you could watch the Packer game on a Sunday or whatever. Neither of us are Packers fans, by the way, so
go Bears.
Go Vikings.
Bears.
My team sucks this year, like every year. But anyway, I know there's a whole shitload of people in Eau Claire laughing when they hear this.
Well, every night we're in each other's song, doing all things lovers always do. Yeah, you always kissing and hugging. Your kind of love is none but trouble. Take it easy, baby. You know you done fooling yourself.
I know there's a whole shitload of people in Eau Claire that are laughing at us now because we outed our football allegiances.
Well, that's all right.
Podcast number.
And the Bears and Packers are playing today, and that's going to be an amazing game.
Ooh, big game. Because
we're ahead by one game. So yeah, we play the Packers 2 of the next 3 weeks, so it's going to be
weird. But
anyway.
Hooligans. You asked if it was a sports bar in Hooligans. I wouldn't consider it like directly a sports bar, but they had enough TVs that people could watch any big sporting event, and really good food. And they because Nick, our bass player, Nick Pettis at the time, in the beginning, he worked there. Was he a bartender there, or was he a waiter, or? I don't think he was working in the kitchen, if I remember correctly.
No,
I think he was a
wasn't
bartender.
Noel Hansen
Yeah.
Speaking of Eau
Yep.
Claire music scene, Noel
Noel was
Hansen,
there.
which I'm sure we'll talk about later. He
And
was
Caleb
a
worked
cook,
there.
but oh, that's right.
And
Yes,
Caleb worked there.
I think,
and later, Eric Thompson.
yeah, I think Nick was a bartender.
I think so. I think so. I didn't think he worked in the kitchen, but that's how we got in at Hooligans.
And well, we had a competing offer. So Nick talked Terry Weld, who owned Hooligans,
Yep.
into, trying live music. And so we had two competing offers on the table. And as I recall, the selling point, and this is important for people not familiar with Eau Claire, like Pioneer was on Water Street, and Water Street was like the college bars.
Yeah.
And that they were packed back then. Like if you go to Water Street today, it's like a ghost town. And then Hooligans was downtown where all the towny bars were. And so we were college students, Ryan was at that point. I was taking a break from school, but so we were used to being in the college bars. So initially it was appealing, like, oh, we could play at Pioneer, we'll be at, on the college bar scene. But then we get this offer to play Hooligans. And as I recall, the deal breaker for us was that Terry was willing to help us promote. He was willing to, pay for some of that. Whereas Pioneer Paul was kind of like, you do your own promotion.
Yep.
You can do a cover charge if you want to make money. And, you basically run with it. Whereas Terry was like, I'll pay you and I'll help you promote, your Thursday night gigs. And so that's where we, early on, again, second gig, we're being offered two opportunities.
I think with that too, I think the thing we were thinking about was the cover charge, and Terry was like, he didn't want to do a cover charge. He just wanted to pay us in, so he was, taking a big leap of faith too.
He was.
And, but we definitely, I think we weighed that out because of the cover charge. That was the thing we were both kind of like, I don't know if we, if that's such a good idea, because on Water Street, like paying a cover charge was at that time kind of just didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the Eau Claire music scene wasn't what it came to be. It's not to say there wasn't music, but it wasn't what it became years later.
Yeah.
And we were just coming into that. I think the Kingsnakes just came into creation right when the Eau Claire music scene was starting to become something bigger.
Well, we had our foot in a couple of different worlds, if that makes any sense, because you had at that time in like the early 90s, mid 90s, you had this group of like house party bands, that would play house parties, like 3 Liter Hit, which was
Venison.
Venison. I think they played those for sure, but then they also played a lot of really big gigs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there was a scene of like this house party scene of like, probably, some form of like rock, punk mix, stuff like that. Where, they, and we didn't, fit into that world. And, there was, the jazz stuff going on at the university, and they were sometimes, getting gigs at the time it was called the Mandarin Club, because I played a couple gigs there. And then, the Stone's Throw was kind of an in and out thing, at that time.
Yeah.
And then, you had like the cover band scene, which I'd played in earlier, like I said, with, I think you mentioned it with Willie Chopper and Dale Drevlo, but that wasn't, for college kids at all. That was just, that was away from, the college area. And even, starting at Hooligans, it was kind of also, big leap of faith. Shout out to Terry Weld for taking that chance. Because we were a young band, and primarily at least in the beginning, we'd be drawing college kids, and Hooligans, that area of Eau Claire at the time wasn't known for like a college kid hangout.
Yeah, no, it's funny because as we're talking about this, it's really coming into. We were really on the cusp of something, and you, I think, were a pioneer to that. No pun intended, talking about the pioneer, but I just thought of that. Like you were playing with like Will and Dale, and in this band up at O'Leary's, and that's kind of the towny musicians. Like that's what I think Eau Claire was. There was a group of townies that had lived in Eau Claire, played music, but they had no association with the college.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you were a college student that got to know some of those crusty old musicians in the Eau Claire scene.
Who was?
And I think,
Yeah. Oh, totally.
was that?
'Cause I remember right before we started the Kingsnakes, or Crawlin Kingsnakes, then later the Kingsnakes. I auditioned for a band. I can't remember the name of them. I quit playing with Willie and Dale, and it was that dude that was a DJ, that really big guy. I think his name was Phil, and he had a rock band. And they played like 70s and 80s rock, and he was a DJ on one of the, I think 98.1 was.
Wait, was Schlenker involved with that group?
I don't think he was.
Okay, 'cause
Maybe
there
he
was
was,
some-
but he
something
certainly.
Carnival, something.
No, that was another Carnival. That was with Schlenker, Mike Schlenker,
Okay.
and I forget the name of the singer. Was it Peter Fippen? But
Probably.
might have been Peter
probably.
Fippen. Maybe, if somebody watches this podcast, they can correct us. But this was Phil, and he was a DJ on one of the rock stations. He had a really cool
Okay.
voice. He's a really big guy, huge guy, and I auditioned for him. It was hilarious because they were all these guys that were probably like mid 40s, and I was like 22 and stuff like this, and I auditioned in. They were playing all these. I didn't really like the music, and so I went there one or two times. And I played, and it wasn't my thing because it was like, Chicago 25 or 624, and stuff like that. It's not certainly not the stuff I listen to. And I told them like the second time, like, this isn't my thing. And they're like, oh, you can learn it all. I'm like, I don't really want to do it. And then we started the Kingsnakes. And I remember Phil, and I forget who the rhythm guitar player was, but they came to Hooligans, I think, after we got going in our Thursday night gig there. And they were like, why didn't you play like that with us? And I'm like, because I don't like Chicago, dude. Well, I mean, I don't mind Chicago, but it wasn't my thing.
Sure.
Yeah. But I can't remember the name of that band, man. And in all our conversations that we've had since this summer, it just popped up to me right now. Well,
a lot of this is the same with me, because I had never made that connection, like just how segregated it was.
Yeah.
And I think you were kind of one of the early folks that was like dipping your toe into that world.
Dipping my toe.
And I think, I mean, I can only assume some of these, seasoned musicians realized, like, holy crap, we have like this university right here with all these really good musicians, because suddenly you started seeing more of these college students playing in other projects around town, I think.
Well, yeah, I'm sure, there was some, I don't know if I call myself a pioneer in that respect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it was something that opened the eyes up to some of the, especially older, tried and true Eau Claire musicians, that they would even work with college kids. Because I know in the beginning, I talked to a number of people before we started the Kingsnakes, and, said I wanted to start a project.
Yep.
But I started before we started the Kingsnakes, I was talking to, a number of different musicians, anybody I could talk to. I'm like, man, I got an idea for a band. And anybody over like 30 as a musician in Eau Claire at that time was really reticent to work with anybody from the university scene. It was kind of like this whole stigma, I don't know if it was just college kids or if it was because of, the jazz program, which is, incredible jazz program. But there was some, level of stigma of working with university people. And, and I was finishing up my degree, but I never really considered myself, how can I say this without offending anybody in the music program? I was in the music program, but I never really felt like I was, 100%, I don't know if
part of it.
Accepted would be the right word, but it's just like, I always felt like I was an outsider, because I wasn't like straight up jazz dude. And I wasn't
can see that.
the straight up choir guy, although I sang in the singing statesman for 4.5 years. But it was kind of like, I still, I knew, like for me, ever since I was a young kid, I knew I wanted to play lead guitar.
Yeah.
You know, and that was my thing. You know, the first time I heard Stevie Ray, I can't remember how old I was. We talked about it in the first podcast, but I'm like, that's what I want to do. And
Yeah.
you know, I wanted to write songs, and I wanted to play my own stuff and not just covers. And, you know, like talking to, you know, older people at the time, you know, who you know, they were primarily playing in cover bands, you know, they were just all like, you know, "Oh, what are you doing writing your own songs?" You know, and I haven't even,
Mhm.
at that point, I hadn't even written anything good, you know, it's just
Yeah.
something I wanted to do.
I agree with that. That's a really good point I hadn't thought of, and I had some experience with that later myself. But I'm just thinking about all this, and this is speculation, but I wonder if some of the Eau Claire thing was, the whole Uniroyal plant closed
Yeah.
down, right?
Hmm.
And I think that changed the whole culture of Eau Claire
Oh, yeah. Big
because
time.
Eau Claire had been this blue collar,
Hmm.
they had the factory, and when that shut
Yeah.
down, that just gutted Eau
Gutted it.
Claire.
Hmm.
And I think Eau Claire took a while to find its identity, and now it's known for the university and the art scene and
Yeah.
like, the thriving downtown. But back then it wasn't like that. It was like two different
Oh,
worlds. And as
definitely.
we were saying,
Hmm.
we were in the Water Street college town, and then suddenly, we're down in Hooligans, which is in the towny part of
Yeah.
town.
Back then,
And
for sure.
it back then, yeah. Now, of course, you go to Eau
Now
Claire,
it's
like the
flipped.
downtown is
That's
thriving.
where all the cool
Yes,
people hang out. It's downtown.
yeah, and Water Street is just a miracle anything's still open on it. I mean, it's been a few years since I've been there, but it's like a ghost town. It's like it has flipped,
It was
but it's very interesting.
I was there one evening with my good friend Jason
Yeah.
Nickus and Brian Brennan, and we were shortly on Water Street, and it was not much going
It's not
on. I
the
was
same.
pretty
Yeah.
surprised, but
So I, I I think you were a pioneer in some ways, but either way, I mean, you were early to that scene. And then I think we started to see that change, and we got to be there to witness more college students working with some of the seasoned musicians and
oh yeah,
some of that world blending. But it was really interesting that early in our second gig, we had two
yep,
offers to be a house band at two different places, both of which weren't used to um, having live music. And I think it
mhm,
shows that they were looking ahead and thinking, oh, maybe we can make some money off this. But as
yeah,
you said, big shout out to Terry Weld.
yeah,
Terry is a
definitely,
great guy.
yep, mhm.
It's been a few years since I talked to him, but Terry ended up going into local politics for a while.
Oh really? Okay,
He gave us our first
yep.
shot. He was
Mhm.
just a really classy
Yeah,
guy.
we played.
Like I
How long did
really
we play there? 3 years.
5, I think. I think it was
Okay,
5
geez,
because it was 96 we started, and I think we played 4 maybe because I think it was 2000 when the Kingsnakes ended
yeah.
ish. No, it was no 2001.
So I think we'd quit playing there before we broke up, but I think a good almost 4 years we played there. I think,
Yeah,
and so
and it was every Thursday night. It was rare that we missed a Thursday night.
yep.
We
I think
played.
we talked with Terry, and sometimes we canceled one, like, you know, in that time between Christmas and New Year's or something.
Yeah,
If there was a few that we didn't play in a year, but I think we probably played 45, you know, times a year at least, or almost 50 times a year,
yeah,
at Hooligans, and that was really important for us too, you know, because. You know, we used to joke, you know, we had more gigs than we had rehearsals and stuff like that. It was definitely true in the beginning, you know, we were playing all the time, and we just, you know, just started getting all these gigs, and a lot of it through, you know, Terry Weld taking a chance on us,
mhm,
and you know, in the beginning, and you know, it worked out great there, and you know, I think it was the perfect place for us to play if you look back, because you know, on Water Street there would have always been that huge problem of 21, you know,
yeah.
in because
And cover
and
charge. I
cover
think cover
charge.
charges would
Yeah,
have not worked. I mean, later that became the
yeah,
norm, but
later.
at that point, if we had gone,
Yeah.
and that's no disrespect to Pioneer
No,
Paul,
none.
like he was willing to give us a shot too, but it was just like, and this is the thing I want to emphasize for the people, checking this out is like, we're two young guys that have no sense of like what the hell. And suddenly we're like, oh, we got to pick between two places. And we were weighing the things
Yeah,
like, oh, well,
yeah.
we'd have to do a cover charge here. Over here, we wouldn't. They're willing to put money into advertising. They're not. I mean, so we just knowing those things, we're like, all right, let's give it a shot with Hooligans.
Yeah.
And it definitely, as you're saying, it gave us a place to play every week
yeah.
and hone our
Mhm.
skills
Mhm.
and get used to. That's where I learned how to talk to an audience.
yeah.
So I didn't need to sit up there with the cards going, "This song was written in 1972."
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
it was by doing that where we learned how to like hone our skills, I think.
we talked about this a lot too, gearing up toward doing the podcast, is about, how much music we played back then, compared to how much live music there is now. We were playing all the time. We had definitely at some point, I can't remember when we, like at some point when we'd gotten a good catalog of songs, we only rehearsed when we had new stuff that we wrote.
Yeah.
And and it was just like, okay, here's the song, rehearse it, and then like the next gig we would play it, and
Yep.
it wasn't, this stuff of like rehearsing it 20 times and then finally playing it live. It was
Nope.
it was all just like, here's the thing, get it down and then play it live. And that's one thing I think, is more of a problem for young musicians today, is that they don't have as many opportunities to play as we did, not as many opportunities to hone their craft, because playing live is the best way to do it. You can practice all you want, but until you got people watching you really, that's when it really sits, because, if you make a mistake in front of people, you remember making a mistake in front of people.
Yeah.
If you make a mistakes alone at home practicing, it's like, yeah, who cares, but.
Or even with your bandmates where somebody like, screws up, they might give you shit about it, but like, okay, we pick it back up, but yeah, when you're live, not only it's a guarantee you're going to be throwing curveballs multiple times in the show, and you got to like figure out like, oh, I got to just figure this out.
That's we got 100
And-
podcasts of curveballs that we had.
But I mean, the fact that like we were thrown into that, I mean, all the stars aligned, because if we'd gone with Pioneer, Paul,
may have been
I
different.
mean, great guy, but I don't think the band would have gone anywhere, because I think people wouldn't have wanted to pay a cover charge, and they wouldn't have probably come to the Pioneer to listen to a blues band.
Yeah.
And so Terry just took that chance, and
we probably would have died on the stage at the Pioneer.
Yes, yes.
So maybe we'd be more famous because of the great stage collapse of like 1998 or something like that.
Also, got to give credit to Nick Pettis, because he worked at Hooligans, and I think he started that conversation with Terry to say like, "Hey, you ever thought of having live music?" And talked him into.
He got us.
And we didn't have a demo.
No,
we didn't have a demo. We
didn't
have anything to like sell.
We
to
never
him
made
to
a demo,
show it.
did we?
No.
We made our album.
I don't think we did.
We never made a demo.
Yeah.
And that also, that speaks to, like the people that saw us right in the beginning and took a chance. In the Kingsnakes, we first started learning, what the business side of music was about. And, because being in a band, you have, the creative side, but you also got the business side if you're going to do it for a long period of time. And we started right away. I made the joke about we had more gigs than we had rehearsals, and I think that was true. But also we were exposed to, the business side of it as well very early, and we knew nothing
very quickly. Yeah.
We knew nothing about this, and it was just kind of like, how do you do this? And that was one thing that, we never talked about it. It was just kind of like, but we talked a lot about, do we take the gig at Pioneer, or do we take the gig at Hooligans? I don't think we were necessarily worrying about the money side of it. We were more worrying about, where are we going to play for more people? And I think that's why we chose Hooligans, and I think it was the right decision. But that, that's all this, kind of like the business side of the music industry. that people talk about all the time. We had no blueprint for that. We were just, we were more or less just trying to get gigs, but we had to start to learn to do that stuff.
It was by the seat of our pants because there was no mentors or anyone that you could turn to be like, hey, how do, and there's no book,
no YouTube videos
there was no YouTube,
no YouTube, but today you could go to YouTube and you could type in like, how do I promote my band and how do I, there's going to be a million videos you can watch, and maybe if the advice is good or not, it makes no difference. There's stuff there. There's no book, in 1996, like how do you start a band? Here's the business side of it. There was nothing like that. We're just flying by the seat of our pants.
I vaguely remember, we did have that discussion about like, how do we reach the most people? And there was the temptation to go with Pioneer because that was our age group. And let's be honest, there was hot chicks there at the Pioneer. And we were thinking, okay, because again, Hooligans was part of the townie bar scene. Like that was downtown.
And they were split at that time in 1996. They were split.
Big time. Like it was a whole different world. If you went to downtown in 1996, I used to joke, it was like tumbleweeds.
Oh yeah.
Like down the, like no one was down there. And if you went into, we used to go to like the Bottle and Barrel because you could get beer late. You could go down there and you'd walk in and it was like some shady looking people. And it was like, you were like, oh, I'm in the, shady part of town here. But like we just, for whatever reason, I can't speak for you, but it helped having Nick be our entryway into that. But Terry, I remember meeting with Terry and him being just such a cool dude. Like he was just you didn't get the sense he was like trying to manipulate or play us. He was just like an open-minded guy that was like, yeah, let's give it a shot. And by the way, I think he said, was it $150 a week we made? I think that's what we made.
And in the end, we're making $300.
Yeah, but at the start, I think we were getting $150. Yeah. Which we thought was for us back then, it was like, holy crap,
I think the reason the deal clincher was that he was talking about promotion and Pioneer Paul was not. And he said, at least in the beginning, we got to get the word out there. And we're like, I think you and I were like, along with like Nick Pettis, we were all doing this all together at the time. And, I think that was the thing that clinched it for us because Terry said he'd do promotion. We're like, yeah, we need that. And he followed through on his word.
He did. I was just going to say that. There was actually a television commercial that we cut, which I still have on VHS, by the way.
Awesome.
I don't know. Hopefully it still works, but I have it on VHS. that Ryan and I did a commercial.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Our attempts at acting. And
I can't.
Yes. Well,
but yeah, and so, that, I think to wrap up at least this portion of the podcast, this is, a really interesting insight into the formation of the Kingsnakes. It's 33, not 33 years ago. It was almost 30 years ago now. This podcast here is a really good insight into the formation years of the Kingsnakes. We'll be talking about the Kingsnakes for a while in this podcast. We've got a lot of other things planned, but for both of us, this is important. And it's important to, to show our creative roots that, how we cut our teeth together. And this is a good start. Next time we'll be talking about some specifically hilarious things going on about booking shows and playing shows, and everything involved with the Kingsnakes. But this is a good start on how we formed, and there's people out there, I'm sure people out there watching this, that can give us more information because, it was 30 years ago and all of our memories aren't like they used to be. And so there's stuff that we probably left out. There's stuff we've forgotten. And that's why, reach out to us, whether it's via social media or the email address. Reach out to us because we want to get people involved in this podcast too. And we are going to, in the future, we are going to have guests and, span this whole entity of a podcast. But Adrian and I talked about this, that it's really, one of our goals with this whole podcast is to leave a legacy. of what we've done. And, you forget stuff. And, there might be some stuff that somebody out there can, fill in some gaps where we, don't remember at the moment, because we were both remembered, some stuff while we were recording this podcast today,
Yeah.
and I think this is going to happen quite a bit. And so, that's kind of our goal for the future, kind of to wrap up this part of the podcast anyways.
Absolutely. I mean, it was very organic, and some of what we came up with today is just connecting dots I hadn't thought of.
Me too.
I mean, it's really cool stuff.
Take it easy, baby, you know you're not fooling yourself.
Let's shift into the last segment, which, something we're going to try to do pretty regularly. Part of what we want to do is help people discover new music and new art forms and things that inspire. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about each podcast is what we're currently listening to. So Ryan, you want to start? What are you listening to in the last few weeks since we recorded?
Well, I brought some vinyl. I brought some vinyl here to the podcast today to show you.
Let's see.
So show and tell.
What you got? All right.
So here, I brought 3 albums, and I'm eternally grateful that Adrian, I don't know if I got to get a better camera.
That's good.
And this is, I ordered from the good old United States of America, the new Colter Wall album. And it's awesome. I love this man. I love the way this man sings. I love his songs, and I love his attitude. It's, he's like a total blue collar guy. I've heard he doesn't give many interviews. I've seen a few, snippets online, but I've been listening to this album a lot. And then Adrian also told me about a concert he went to of Johnny Blue Skies, which is, everybody knows him as Sturgill Simpson. This album came out, I believe, was it last year, 2024?
I think so, yeah. I think it was 2024, yeah.
Great album. Check it out. It's got this cool vibe. It's just like, it's almost like, I wouldn't even say there's much country in it. It's almost kind of like some jazz stuff in it. If I dared to venture out and say the J word,
I could see that. I also hear like some 70s kind of like rock,
definitely.
like 70s. I don't know what you'd even call that kind of.
I was trying to think of that 70s band that sang Peg, and that's the band that I'm thinking about here when I listen to this. Steely Dan. Steely Dan, finally remembered.
Oh, okay.
And there's like the Steely Dan vibe. He must be a Steely Dan fan, Well, it was Jeff the Skunk Baxter was the guitarist. Michael McDonald was one of the keyboards and vocalists in that band. Great stuff.
Every time I think of Michael McDonald, you don't know me on the He's got that.
Yeah. But the Johnny Blue Skies album, check it out. It's good stuff. Colter Wall. And then this is an older one. And this is Emmylou Harris, Red Dirt Girl. That I love Emmylou Harris. I think she's just one of the best singers out there. And this album actually is kind of funny because for many people laugh about this, but I started line dancing this year for something to do physically. And they started line dancing this year to Red Dirt Girl, and I was like, I'd never heard the song before, but I knew it was Emmylou Harris. I'm like, that's a great fucking song. And then, so I went and ordered the album, and the album's great too. And just really good stuff. And that's kind of the 3 things that I've been listening to for a while now, but definitely the Colter Wall and the Johnny Blue Skies are regular rotation for me right at the moment.
Well, I'm glad you like those recommendations. I know you're hard to please.
Yes.
Like Ryan, as long
Yes.
as I've known Ryan, like he's tried and true. Like something you like, you stick with
Oh, yeah.
it. So
Mhm.
I don't know how many times I've introduced stuff, and often I get a nope, no, no. But every once in a while, Ryan will come back with, and sometimes it takes him a little
Yeah. Oh,
while,
yeah.
but
Mm.
but he'll come back and be like, okay, yeah. But so
That was with
I'm
Tom
glad
Waits.
that got to see
We
it.
said in the first podcast, Bone Machine I didn't like when I first heard it. And
Yeah,
but then
yep.
and so but it took me, and you were also insistent in like, yeah, you got to listen to this guy, and at first I'm like, nope, not listening to him. But you knew enough to keep prodding me to listen.
Yeah.
Now on a serious note, Adrian, you alluded to it at the beginning of the podcast. We're getting up to the age now where family members pass, and sadly so do heroes. I think this is probably a big topic for the last part of the podcast is the passing of Todd Snider, which had happened before we recorded the first podcast. Like, was it the day before or something like that, or a couple days before or something like that? But
I feel like it was like the day before our first podcast, because I know we mentioned it. I think
we
really briefly on the first one because it had just happened. Like,
And since his passing, we've been talking a lot about Todd Snider. And we both kind of went, or this is a topic that's very important for us in general too. I wrote Adrian, I said I felt like I'd let Todd Snider down because I kind of stopped listening to him in his later years. He had drug and alcohol problems, and just wasn't the musician he was when we got into him. And I, more or less stopped listening to Todd Snider. Occasionally something would come up on it, YouTube feed or something like that. But I stopped actively listening. And then, his passing, and there's, I don't want to get into the details of the passing and stuff like that, because there's a lot of crap on the internet that's not, you never know what to believe. And that's not the point of our podcast. But we're talking more about the human side of, life of what we're doing, and even our heroes. And Todd Snider has demons. Everybody knew that. There's nothing new. And we're not here to, to bring them back up and to, tread over his, legacy. But the topic that I said to, to Adrian, I feel like I kind of let him down in the whole thing about, like when our heroes age, because we were totally into Todd Snider, back in the day, and we were, we listened to, East Nashville Skyline. And what was the name of that live album that came out before that?
I don't remember.
So I think around 1995, 96 would have been the time that
it's got a couple live albums, but let me look quick.
Is that one we listened to all the time?
And I don't remember. I feel like you introduced me to Todd Snider. I think you were the one that introduced me to him.
I think Jason Eckes introduced me to Todd Snider, if I remember correctly. And
so let's see. It's Near Truce and Hotel Rooms is the live album that we used to listen to all the time.
Yeah.
And it was that and East Nashville Skyline. And I mean, for a while, everything he put out, like we would like just binge and like listen to. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, for me, I was also attracted to that persona he had, like the storyteller, the hard living troubadour that, was drinking and smoking and, living a carefree life and, drifting from couch to couch. And like, I always thought that was like this appealing thing. And I think that really drew me to his music. So you and I used to listen to him a ton.
Oh, yeah.
And since his passing, I've been listening to him a lot. And when you made that comment, it really struck me about, feeling like you let him down. I mean, I could feel some of that too. And then that got me thinking about like the heroes of like Sinatra, when Sinatra got older and his voice changed, and like, it was hard for me to listen to some of that. And I've been wrestling with that notion of, do we let our heroes down? Because we all age, we all have health stuff. I mean, I'm going through it with my the thyroid cancer and trying to get back to singing, and you've referenced some of the
Yeah.
things, aches and pains you're getting as you're getting
New
older.
hip on the way.
Yeah, new hip on the way, and you'd mentioned like some possible arthritis and things going on that can impact your playing in some respects. And so like we all do it, but for some, our heroes age and things come up, and then suddenly we drift away from it, and that is tough. And I don't know that we came to any answer about it, but that was a very interesting point you raised about that.
I think it's more of just, is it, the whole aging thing, we talked about this too, with, us being over 50 now, in the first podcast we talked about, I said, I view this as my last creative decade. And, or how did I say? I think I said it a bit more eloquently than that, but I feel like the 50s, when you're in your 50s, that's your last decade of being able to be really creative and being able to do it.
Yeah.
You get over
In most cases.
there's cases of people over, in their 60s that are really creative. I'm not saying I won't be creative, but I know I won't be able to play the guitar that I can now. And I can't play the guitar that I used to be able to play 10 years ago. And you've had, your problems with singing,
Yeah.
I've always, I've told Adrian, I'll quit when I can't do it at the level I want to do it, and, we talked about many musicians who haven't done this. And, that's a thing on our podcast too, maybe the smart asses out there, well, you guys should quit now. So,
Well, speaking of that, and this was actually so some of what I've been listening to, definitely a lot of Todd Snider. And in fact, I've been devouring this book of
I gotta
his,
get
which
it.
I've had for years.
I gotta get it.
And I'm about, 3/4 of the way through it, and it's brilliant. But Guns N' Roses just came out with 2 new songs.
Okay.
And I listened to them thinking, okay, let's see what, because I was a big Guns N' Roses fan growing up.
Oh yeah.
In high school, especially. I
Mhm.
used to listen to Guns N' Roses to get pumped up before like a sporting event, and Appetite for Destruction was such a huge album in our high
Oh
school
yeah.
years
No,
and
totally.
early college. They were still putting out good stuff, and then they just, really kind of crapped out.
Yeah.
I mean, and now they're back trying to make like their third comeback, and it's like I listened to these 2 new songs they put out, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just not thinking I don't know. And so that's the thing, like, and you and I were sharing some messages back and forth, like, how much of this is about business? Like some of these folks that just they can't give it up because they need the money,
sadly.
or
Mhm.
maybe they don't need the money, but they've become such a like the Rolling Stones or a Sinatra that have become so huge that people are still willing to spend that money to go see them. So I wonder how much of the machine is making them stay out there into their like 80s.
Yeah.
It's a real tough thing. Like, and I respect the hell out of you for being able to say, like, when I know that I'm not able to produce, I can walk away. I was kind of forced to face that prospect when I couldn't sing.
Yeah.
And I was wrestling until, you and I started having these conversations like, well, maybe it's time, maybe it's done. And I was trying to get my mind around that and really struggling because that was my identity for so long was I was the singer. And so I wonder how much of Todd Snider wrestled with that, at the end. Pardon me, but
Well, I believe
how hard that must have been. I mean, for him to like probably knew like, okay, I'm not at the level I once was.
Well, he said that in an interview, I believe, before he passed away, that he didn't think he would live long.
Yeah,
and
he was dealing with a lot of health stuff.
A lot of pain. You said that he had pain from
he had a spinal thing
pain
going
or something
on
like that.
Yeah.
And and he was saying there's nothing you can do for my pain. And I think that led to a lot of his addiction problems. But yeah, so he I think he kind of saw the writing on the wall. I mean, I still don't really know exactly what happened with his actual death. I think it's pretty kind of a weird circumstance, but I think what's important out of this whole thing is this person was very important for us musically for a significant part of our life.
Absolutely.
Our lives. And it's just weird how, like you drift away and then, you're like, okay, I don't really listen to that person anymore. And as I, with the internet, you get, if you listen to, YouTube or whatever long enough, you get, suggestions of what you should listen to. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. And so sometimes they, play a Todd Snider song. And, sometimes it'd be like, oh yeah, I remember listening to that, but since his passing, I went back and listened to those two albums that we listen to all the time. And it's just like, wow, really fucking good. I forgot how good of a songwriter. He was a storyteller. I got to see him live. I saw him live with Jason Eckes at the Club Tavern in Madison, Wisconsin, or near Madison. And great. He just played solo acoustic guitar, sang, and played for like 3 hours straight. In this it was packed, standing room only, and he just, he had the crowd in the palm of his hand, and it was awesome. It was an awesome concert. He's not a virtuoso in any respect. There's, a lot of people won't get him. A lot of people are like, his guitar's not tuned here, and that wasn't too important to him. But it's, it's some good stuff. Good stuff.
Well, ironically, I mean, I'm sad that I didn't get to see him live, and obviously won't have that opportunity. But a lot of people won't get him. But then it's surprising someone that do. Because there's been a few times through the years where I'll pop on that live album. In fact, I did the other day, and my fiance was like, "Who is that?" And I told her, and she's like, "I like this." And it's like that's happened a few times where I think he appealed to people because of that personality and the storytelling. It definitely influenced how I approached an audience, how I talked to an audience, some of the stories we would tell, some of the banter, and like a lot of it was Todd Snider. So definitely, definite sad.
Yeah, influenced me as a songwriter for sure.
Yeah, and from him, so this last few weeks, occasionally, because he talks very openly about his heroes, I've been putting on some John Prine, who's somebody that I haven't listened to a bunch through the years, and I really want to like pay more attention to because of Todd Snider's passing. And then I don't know if you ever listened to Jeff Buckley, but just last night I watched a documentary called "It's Never Over" about Jeff Buckley, he was the son of Tim Buckley, who was a musician who passed young, and Jeff Buckley died at a young age, unfortunately. But back when we were playing music, I got into Jeff Buckley's one album that he put out, Grace, and this documentary I watched last night was quite powerful.
Okay.
So I've been listening to some of that. And lastly is the Stephen Wilson Jr.
Oh yeah, I like that.
I've been he's having a moment, and his music is really powerful. And he's the kind of country artist that it's good to see get some traction.
Yeah, totally.
Like he's just a really good songwriter and got an interesting backstory. He was a scientist, and he quit science to pursue a dream of playing in music, and has made it. And like, it's just really cool, his backstory. I was watching some interviews where his father passed and left him money, and he basically took that money, left his science job, and recorded his first like demo with it, and like shopped it around, and now he's making it big in music, and it's just a really good story.
That's
and he's
really cool.
Really, really good songwriter.
Yeah, I like his stuff that I've listened to.
So that's what we've been listening to. So what are you working on? What have you been working on the last few weeks?
The last few weeks, I've got a couple new song ideas that are kind of in the incubation stage. Kind of got the ideas written down and kind of thinking about which way I want to go. At the moment, there's lots going on with work and private life and stuff like that. So it's not. I don't have as much time as I would like to flesh out some new songs, but I've got like 3 or 4 song ideas that I think are some good things that we will work on together.
Yeah, well, you mentioned at the top that 10 Feet Tall and Bulletproof is one that you've written, and so we're going to start working on that early in the new year to get that out. And there's a few things that I had been working on prior to my cancer surgery, and so you and I at some point might try to flush those out. One thing that I don't know if I didn't. Did I tell you I got this little?
Yeah, you told me that.
Thing? So I haven't even opened it yet. So a few weeks ago, I bought this MPK Mini. So Ryan and I were talking about drum machines. Because we were talking about the last episode about D'Angelo's passing, and like that was getting me into this like R&B and And I was like, I've always thought about that. Well, researching it, like this isn't a drum machine, but it has some of the capabilities. But so this is a little contraption I'm gonna like try to dabble in and learn a little bit about this device here
Well,
to try to help with the songwriting process.
yeah.
I mean, as a singer, I don't play an
Mm-hmm.
instrument, and I touched on earlier some of the insecurities about not writing the notes and like, but like this helps with fleshing out song ideas, and I want to use that
Yep.
as something to dabble in. So that in the coming weeks and months, I'm hoping to learn a little bit about using this little device and
Yeah.
seeing what I can
Well,
take from
because
that.
you were
So yeah,
Adrian was conveying to me, he wanted to um, give me more information, because I think you started the conversation like, I feel bad because, you know, I can't play an instrument. And so, you have these you get an idea and then you
really.
come to another musician, other people sometimes to me, and that you would like to give, whoever you collaborate with, you would like to give more information, I think is what this
Yeah,
boils down to. And so we were talking about first a drum machine because I don't have any, a lot of experience with any drum machine, but I know there's some stuff you can do where, can play chords for you and lay down a groove. And then I did a little research and like the drum machines have changed a little bit since
yeah,
compared to what I looked at them, probably 20 years ago. So, and then we're talking about a keyboard, like a little MIDI keyboard and how that
yeah,
would be something where you could at least, like lay down some framework that, somebody like
yeah.
myself can hear more of what your idea is.
Yeah, I mean, because in the past, I literally sing it to you, or
Yeah.
I'll like record it on my phone, like a little recorder app, and then like share it with you, and that's how we've worked. But I mean, we talked about in the first episode. I dabbled in piano years ago. Like I can, plunk out a few little things here and there, and I've used that through the years. And the way my mind works, and it's changed, and we'll talk about that in future episodes, is like it used to just be about writing poetry for the
Yep.
lyrics, and but I now can hear musical ideas, but it's just being able, as Ryan said, to share it with other musicians in the language they understand. And so this will be an attempt to try to like expand some of that. So we'll see. I hate technology, as I said at the beginning, and this is going to be a whole lot of new technology, but I think it's worth especially at our age, trying
Yep.
new things, keeping the brain cells firing. All right. Well, I think that's a good
Yep.
place to end it.
Mhm.
So this has been Adrian and Ryan's Stories to
Yep.
Tell, our second episode. And we talked a little bit about the early formation of the Kingsnakes. Come back for our next episode. We'll keep that conversation going. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
Early in the morning, slip out of a bed. I'm out the door, hanging my little lid. Saw her at the bar. What was her name? Looked real good last night, but this morning ain't the same. I'm doing a walk of shame. I'm doing a walk of shame. Well, she was